Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Good afternoon. We're here this afternoon with Randall Reitz. We're going to be doing part 2 of his interview. We had technical difficulties last time, so we're going to see if we can make it through this time. Welcome, Randall.
It's good to be back. Thank you.
Right. Good. And we noticed when Nick did his interview with you, he mentioned you were running for District E. We just said you were running. You didn't have a place you were running from. You were just running.
He said he was inspired by your podcast to do his own, actually.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. And I think the more information out there, the better.
Yeah.
For
sure.
From any quarter, and it seems like this is the way to do it nowadays, is to have podcasts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People seem to be able to listen if they can't watch.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
That's wonderful.
Right. We want to go back, and I finally kind of figured out you think the city is going in the right direction.
I do.
And I kind of thought, I think I know why I feel like the city is not necessarily going in the right direction. And I think part of it is I think there's a large component of the city that's not looked at, and that would be the middle-aged and older population when decisions are being made. I think that because I was reading an article this morning, and it was back from 2018, and it was talking about how great downtown is for all of the young people, and how, like Brandon Strom is young, and all of these people, and I thought, but it was almost mocking, that this used to be Dysfunction Junction and all of that, and I thought, but it wasn't that. I didn't think people really felt that it was that. They said young people always moved away because they didn't think that we had the fun stuff they wanted to do here. But I think almost it's gone to a point where it's ignoring the needs, not just the wants, but the needs of older people. And I want to give you a couple of examples that I think that's happened in.
Please do.
One is, doing the downtown, and I'm back on 4th and 5th, but the reason I'm back on 4th and 5th is it's like it's ignoring the needs of older people. That it's difficult for them to park. Many people have said, I won't go downtown anymore. I think that a lot of it, when you look at people that are retired, and we go back to the fixed income, when you put in parking meters that are more expensive, it's like it's not that much, but you add things together. I know I was looking at our bill for our sanitation, your sewer, and not water because we have water from Ute, but trash and sewer. It has gone up almost every month. And I think it is because of the new truck system where we're doing all the recycling. Because they said if you go to the recycling, it will be less expensive.
That's true.
For everybody. And that, then we're actually recycling. Now, we did have a recycling program, at least in our neighborhood, before, and you paid $1.50 a month for it. And there was one truck that came around, and they had their 4 different bins that you added stuff to. But it seems to me like there's several trucks that the city's paying for, and our bill has gone up. It went up again last month, $3 more. And
really?
So, and it has gone up progressively. It went down a little bit to start out with, but every couple of months it goes up a couple of dollars. And it's not that it's that big of a deal, but when you keep adding that to somebody, and there's all these different ways that you're getting taxed, and our taxes went up so much this year, really significantly, because of the appraisal of your houses. So, and the city did not reduce the mill levies that they took in due to the increase in property value, which would have kept the taxes down. So I really feel like it's being older people and middle-aged people are being ignored. So what do you?
I mean, I'll say two things about that. One is I think that critique of 4th and 5th Street is probably the one that hits home to me the most. Other ones I'm more happy to push back on, but I do think that changing a street that a person's been familiar with for many years and making it more complex is especially hard on that population. And I think that's one thing that I would take seriously for sure. How do we make it less complex? I think the new plan that we'll be putting in April will help with that somewhat, but I don't think it'll be as simple as it was before, unfortunately. I do think that the same critiques were brought against roundabouts when they first came into the community, and they were very controversial and very disruptive, and now we've come to embrace them, I think, as a community overall. I'm hopeful the same thing can happen with 4th and 5th Street, but I do think that that's the population that I'm most concerned about for it.
Well, and it's a fourth of the population.
It is.
And they feel like they have no say. And even though they complain, people have said, no, you don't feel like that. And yes, yeah. And, you know, I'm old, but I'm not that old where I think it's just not, it's not good. The way it's structured, and if it were we made a mistake like they did with the back end parking, this didn't work. Let's go back.
The thing with the garbage fees, I haven't heard that from anybody else.
Well, that is odd because I looked at it and because it'll tell you this is how much it was last month. But it has gone up every month, and I'm like, and it's not like you're in arrears. It's this is the new price.
Here's the new fee. I would love to see that when we're done here. I just so I can get a sense of that. I could pass it along to the city staff to see, is this being billed appropriately or is something wrong here?
Oh, I don't think it's billed inappropriately. I think that's what it is. And I shred my bills right after I pay them. That way I don't get confused. Easy to confuse. Well, Ruth, what were some of the thoughts you had?
Oh, I was thinking back, watching your podcast with Nick Allen. And kind of wondering what your thoughts are. I know that you're in this campaign. We're almost at the end of it now.
5 weeks to go.
Yeah, exactly. And the ballots will drop very soon. And I'm just wondering, the financial end of it. What, in fact, is your biggest contributor to your campaign? And why is that?
So when I was on council in the first year, we put in campaign donation limits. Originally it was $625, and now it's $675. And so I have had one person who donated $675. I think 2 have donated $500, and those are all long-term family friends.
Okay, so they're all family friends. They're not any like your Western Colorado Alliance or any of those kind of NGOs.
I was endorsed by Conservation Colorado, and they might be giving me a small donation, but it would be more like $100, $200, nothing bigger than that.
All right.
Because that was odd to me too, that both the endorsement and where it was coming from, because the problem I have with that is that's a Denver-based nonprofit, and I don't know why they are in Grand Junction politics. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think we look at like conservation in Colorado. A lot of what I want to conserve is in Western Colorado. I don't have as much interest in the Front Range area, and so I align pretty well with their what they would like to have happen. And
what is that they'd like to have happen? Because when I look at their website, it looks like climate activists and almost climate extremists. Because do you believe that we're in danger of not existing in 10 years or 12 years? Or
I do not.
Are you a climate alarmist in that sense?
I believe in climate change is a detrimental thing to our world and to our lives.
And do you believe that's caused by human activity, and
I
especially
do.
Human activity in Grand Junction?
I mean, we contribute to it. I mean, I think it's a worldwide system right now, right? We all what we do here affects China, and what China does affects India, and India affects Russia,
or affects us.
Affects us, right?
Right, through a Gulf Stream. But do you think that we as human beings can control the climate?
I think we can lessen our impact on it. I mean, I think
To what extent?
So I would say we have impacted it through our use of fossil fuels and other things that create global warming and global climate change. And I think reversing those things will help quite a bit.
But what happened when I was in college, it was we were going to freeze to death.
Yeah.
And what happened, they were wrong. I mean, that was the science then that they said we're going to be in an ice age if we don't stop doing these things. And that hasn't transpired, and we won't say how many years.
Yeah. I mean, you look at just the temperatures, I think 9 of the hottest 10 years in the recorded history of the world have been the last 10 years. And this is probably going back, to 1800s. It's hard to say much beyond that. And it's escalating over time. This year we had maybe 3 skiffs of snow in the valley, and it's tricky that way. I think for me the science is pretty clear that we are definitely causing climate change, and it will permanently impact the human life and now the animal life and the plant life of our planet. And I would love to not be the one contributing to that.
Just a curiosity item from that.
Yeah.
Climate change brought about by human beings, but then on the other hand, we're trying to go electric, and electric is every bit as decisive. It's just,
and we need more and more.
We need more and more of the minerals out of the ground. So we're going to have to be mining. We're going to have to be doing all of that kind of stuff. 6 one way and half a dozen the other.
I think. So we're putting a garage apartment in our backyard, and we're going to put solar panels on it. We had them on our previous house, and I think that's a nice combination because you're creating power, electricity through a natural renewable source that's then powering your car. I agree with you that using coal-powered electricity to power your electric vehicle is not helping at all.
But then the solar panels themselves will wear out. They do have rare earth minerals in them in order to make them function. And
you can't get rid of them.
And you can't get rid of them. So I mean, I can understand passive solar with your glass and that kind of thing, and triple pane glass to keep the cold out and the warm in, vice versa in the summertime. But I have a hard time with solar panels.
I think if I had them for 25 years in my house, they will have many times over given more benefit to the world than having not had them. Yes, there are some small detriments, like some of the rare earth minerals and the plastic that goes into them. Cody Kennedy would point out to me that they're made in China, and we don't know who made them in China. But I think overall, it's better for the earth than the alternative.
Okay.
Well, see, and we always thought it was better just to conserve. I mean, I think there's a difference. I think you need to be good stewards of the world, but you also need to look really on the impact. Like, I look at young people, and it sounds like I'm on a young people thing today. I'm not. But, I know when I was a young person, we used cloth diapers. Do you know that Pampers never disintegrate, ever in a landfill? Yeah. So if I'm so concerned about the planet and the landfill, why am I using a disposable diaper?
That's a great point.
And when
Absolutely great point.
We always had paper bags, and that's what we picked. Instead of plastic, it was the industries that turned that.
Yeah.
And when we went to the grocery store, you had a butcher who wrapped up your whatever your meat was in white paper.
Yeah.
Which, again, Kent Harbert would say, we can use this because it's a renewable resource. So being on people for plastic bags, and then you look at how many people buy their water and it's in a plastic bottle.
Yeah.
And even if you're taking it back and renewing
making iced tea in plastic jugs. I mean, we used to make iced tea, sun tea. Stick it out in a glass jug.
Porch,
right.
Yeah.
So it's a different way of being good stewards instead of virtue signaling and saying, well, I am so good because I'm doing these things, but you're not doing other things that are more concrete. That
you won't hear any pushback on that from me. I call my wife an anti-plastic eco warrior. She gets rid of plastic anywhere she can. That's her spirit. She comes from Brazil, and the beaches there are all covered in plastic now.
Right.
They kind of go out with the flood of the water and go out into the ocean, into the rivers, and And so she's very anti-plastic because that's what most offended her.
Right.
I think we can be eco-good and not be eco-perfect. I think eco-good is better than eco-bad. And for you, that, sounds like for you, conservation, avoiding plastics unnecessarily, I think those are all very good things to do.
Well, and styrofoam and all of the other packaging that we have, and then you add in the chemicals to keep it going longer. But in your life then, what would you be willing to give up? Because to make the climate change enough, the actual thing is you have to cut back on what you have.
Yeah. The thing I gave up that is been most difficult is meat. I haven't had meat in 10 years. I think the way we produce meat right now is very bad for the environment. All the antibiotics and just all this super dense animals pushing together. It's bad for the animals, it's bad for the environment. And so I gave up meat 10 years ago. I miss meat. I don't cook as much as I used to because I loved cooking meat before, but I felt like it was the right thing for me to do.
So all meat, like chickens and everything?
I will have some fish, that's it.
The
Very
fish is
interesting.
really hard to... I won't go into my little story. I do have a story.
Let's
The
not
fish
go
is
there.
really,
Let's not go
really
there.
funny.
I'm
but
going to change course here.
Yes.
Okay.
Since we talked last,
Yeah.
there has been some changes in the way our resource center is going to be functioning. We're not going to do the North Avenue property now.
That's
Is that correct? Can you give us an idea of why?
So the announcement from the city gave very broad terms. It's just when we did our due diligence, like we talked about last time, we found out that it would be far more expensive than the value of the building, and so we didn't want to move ahead with it.
Okay, I just have a question, and this can be, did it have a lot of asbestos in it?
That word was not mentioned.
Okay. I just
I
wondered.
know that's been your
I just
practice.
was curious. I was just curious.
She's the asbestos lady, so
That we've been asked not to talk about those details too much yet. I know the city's going to be giving them a bigger report soon. We actually have a meeting planned for next Wednesday to talk about next things for that, and that's when they're going to give the full report as to what happened. And so that was added to the schedule just today for next Wednesday.
okay.
And so that would be a full report in front of everybody, so if they wanted to
It won't be
know.
executive, it'll be just an open session.
Okay. Okay.
I wished I could be there. It's
Too much.
Lent season for me, and
Yeah.
we have our lentil services on Wednesdays,
Okay.
unfortunately. So until Easter's over, I'm not going to be able to attend those meetings. And anyway, that's neither here nor there.
That's your commitment to your faith.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
To me, God's more important
Yeah.
than any of the rest of this, so I'll take it that way. Anyhow, so now what?
Well, it puts us in a little bit of a tough spot because we're still committed to closing down April 15th in the current spot.
Right?
And so like we talked about last time, there will be some gap in services. And that's the purpose of the meeting next week is to talk about what's next.
So are there ideas on the table?
Staff will come with some proposals for us. I think it's going to be kind of a slowing down again. I think Mike Bennett is someone who likes to slow things down a little bit and be thoughtful about it and inclusive with the people. So I'm hoping.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Might make people a little happier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you think there'll be any change in the amount of services that are provided, or how the services are provided with this new idea? Or do you think it's just taking more time to find a permanent building?
I think all options are on the table right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it makes it kind of expensive. And this is on a different topic. I noticed that there is a 40-day boycott of Target. Did you see that?
Mm-mm.
And it is done by a church because they're mad at Target for taking out DEI policies
okay.
that they've had. What do you think about that? Because President Trump has also said he wants to take away DEI principles. And I thought it was really interesting why many people, white corporations, thought it was better for them. What's your opinion on the removal of DEI? Does the city have that? Have they been impacted, or are they going to remove? Because I know the school district has a DEI person. I don't know if they've taken them away, or does the city, and what's your opinion on that?
I'll just go to your first point. I think there's always a right for a person to kind of vote with their pocketbook.
Absolutely.
People on the right were upset about Bud Light and stopped drinking Bud Light, and now it's dropped down. They tanked their business. The people on the left are upset about Hobby Lobby, and or Target was always kind of a darling to the left, and now they're less of a darling. And so I think that's part of business, right?
Right.
If you're going to get involved in politics, you're going to be more appealing to one group over the other.
Absolutely.
So.
But I thought what was interesting is why they did it. And they said, too, that it was affecting the bottom line. It is, and I'm going to just read this.
Please.
Face-fed corporate moralism is unpopular. DEI is out of touch with American public. Corporate moralism has damaged American consumers. DEI, alongside environmental, social, and government initiatives, have unnecessarily raised the prices of energy, food, transportation, and housing. And I thought that's interesting. They said that...
Who is they?
This is a commentator on, and of course it was Fox News, to be honest. But that was what Target was saying. You know, that we went back to the shareholders, and they just said that they felt like that what Americans want, this is what they said, Americans want businesses to get back to focusing on their bottom line, delivering reliable, affordable, and high-quality products to consumers.
I mean, I think that is job 1A of any business, right? Is to have your products and do it well, do it reliably, and get them to people in the way they want. That has to always be your number one business.
Right.
And other things can be done, but they should be secondary.
Right.
You know, I recognize I was born in a middle class family, a very stable family. I benefited from my upbringing and who I am, and so I'm not someone who's going to say that I didn't get privilege. I definitely have had privilege across my life, and I recognize that. And so on a personal level, I do try to share my privilege more broadly, mostly through my training program, you know, where I'm trying to train people who look like the community at large, you know. And so I want to train people who can serve different populations broadly. And so most of our trainees are still going to be people looking like me, but we're going to try and get people also who are going to represent other parts of the community that might be underrepresented otherwise. Okay,
so go into that a little bit deeper. In your training programs, you're talking about through St. Mary's.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at people that look a little bit differently than you're saying that if I look a little bit different, say I look a little bit different, but I'm not as qualified as Ruth is, who doesn't look different, you would choose me first?
My experience is that I don't have to make that choice.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
We recruit nationally, and we've done very well in getting very strong candidates from all different diverse backgrounds. Currently, we have a trainee who was born in El Paso and grew up on both sides of the border, and she's one of our best therapists ever. You know, so she can do therapy in Spanish. She can. She's outstanding. You know, and we feel very fortunate that we're able to attract her to come to our community, and she's staying in town after she graduates, and it's a real win for the community.
That is, because you do need people that can relate to other people.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that. It's only if that is my first quality that I look for,
right? Instead
of saying, "Are you the best qualified?"
Job 1A always has to be providing good service.
Right.
You know, and I'm in one of the only fields where, you know, being a man is not considered to be a positive thing, right? Because women especially do not want to have a man therapist, right? They prefer to have a female therapist. They might feel a bit more heard. If they've been through traumatic experiences, they might feel more comfortable with someone who is not going to look like the person who traumatized them. And so I think my field is an area where I have come to expect that, you know, there will be less men than women in my field. Same with OBGYN doctors. They're almost all women now because women want to have other women helping them with their care.
Right.
It seems natural to me.
It is natural. I agree. Yeah. And I think, too, males have a harder time in psychotherapy. I know there are some, because of sexual abuse that's happened in that field, that some psychologists will say, I just won't treat a woman by myself because it's not appropriate.
It is a very intimate.
They'll do family.
Work. Yeah.
But not that.
So how does all of this then translate to our city council?
Great question, Ruth. You know, I think that what the city does well is they try and serve the needs of the broadest population, and that's always got to be their job. You know, we have brought in someone a Spanish-speaking woman, does a great job of providing service, of coordinating services with the Spanish-speaking population. I don't think we do a very good job with our website. It's only in English. I wish it were also available in Spanish.
To say that is not one of the shining stars.
That's not,
with that,
no.
With that. It just, yeah.
And I think
something
Spanish is the
desired.
only language that's really secondary in Grand Junction. There's not really any large populations that speak other languages. And so for us to do well with English first, and then also try and do equally well with Spanish, we have not got
Stop,
that yet.
you guys. I did a mistake.
You forgot to shut down. How does all of this that we were just talking about relate to City Council?
You know, I think the city as a whole needs to try and take care of the people who live here. For most of them, that's going to be people who speak English and whose needs will be easily met in English. But for some of them, it's people who speak Spanish. And so we have added some Spanish-speaking staff who do outreach and coordination of care, some interpretation services. I think we've done much better with that since I've been on council. But I think our website is still only English. I wish we had a better service to make it also available in Spanish.
Okay, very good.
So we touched a little bit on the homeless. I want to go back to something we were talking about before, and that is the problem of drug abuse and crime and alcoholism in our community, and how the city addresses that, because that is the population that is the problem to a large extent. And it's also, if you provide more services, from what I understand from people that are true alcoholics, not problem drinkers, because the problem drinker probably could, through therapy, say, I'm hurting myself, I'm making a bad decision.
Yeah.
But we never seem to be willing to anymore make any carrots and sticks in how we do policies, saying, if you receive this service, this is the expectation. Do you see any value in doing that at all?
Absolutely. So a couple of examples for you. You know, think about people who get DUIs.
Right.
Right? If you get one DUI, you're going to go to court and pay a fine. If you get three, I think it's 3, you're going to lose your license for a long, long time. Very appropriate, because you're putting other people at risk. In medicine, if you're having liver failure because you're an alcoholic, you're not going to get a transplant until you've proven you can be sober for many years.
Okay, let's go back to how the city uses that, because that's where I see a disconnect in what we do. You know, you want to have a certain not a certain behavior because it's affecting me. If other people are not following the rules and are not contributing, it makes it more expensive for me. It makes it a higher crime rate. What can the city do in terms of what they provide?
And what should the city do?
And what should the city do? Should they do anything?
I mean, I think it for me, it comes back to, is that what that person is doing impacting society? And if it is, then we should be involved in it for sure.
Do you think it does impact society?
Sometimes. You know, I think you look at the hospital, a lot of the patients in the hospital most frequently, for longest stays, tend to have alcohol problems. Not so much marijuana.
Right.
Don't use marijuana, never have, never will.
Right.
But alcohol is a big problem in our society. I think, and so we see it every day in the healthcare system. And so it's, you know, those people tend to lose their jobs. So I think natural consequences are usually the best. So losing your job, losing your marriage, losing your home, those are all things that will come as natural consequences to a person's use. The city gets involved when it impacts someone else.
So how are you involved as a city with the closure of Mine Springs? And what will that do how will that impact the city?
I think it will, to be determined still, because people are trying to figure out who's going to step in and fill in the gap. And I think in the short term, there'll be a hole. The city hasn't really been involved too much with Mine Springs financially, hardly at all. St. Mary's has done a lot. They've given them millions and millions of dollars over the years to build the hospital and to maintain the hospital. And we took over management of the hospital for a year, last year, because it was so poorly run. You know, I've interfaced with Mine Springs for 25 years. I think they do the best in a bad situation they can, but it's not nearly enough. I think we underfund mental health services nationwide ever since we pushed people out of state hospitals into communities. That's fine to do. I think it's more humane in some ways, but if we're not going to back up with more funding, then it's going to be this problems over and over again. So there's things they can and can't do. I think of all the ones in Colorado, we've probably had the worst one. So many audits and so many really bad findings, and so in some ways I'll miss having their service in our community. In some ways I'm like, what was it? Did we ever have a good service?
Yeah. That's a big question. I just thought that's going to really impact. I mean, it'll put such a strain on St. Mary's again and community for that, and it's more expensive care, it would seem to me, to have you in the hospital as opposed to...
Yeah, if someone's suicide in the hospital, they have to have a sitter next to them all the time. And whereas if you're at West Springs Hospital, they can have more efficiencies.
But on the other hand, the resource center is not going to be that big of a help in that particular case either.
No, not in the short term. I mean, and it's not intended to, really. That's not the goal of the resource center, is to replace a psychiatric service. So.
Okay, impact fees.
Impact fees.
Impact fees. You had a delay in decision this last week, I understand, about the impact fees.
We chose to push it off till April 2nd.
Why?
A number of reasons. One is legally, we decided that we've been making enough changes to what we had passed in the first reading that we felt like we didn't really, it would be hard to say the second reading was actually a second reading. It felt like it would be considering something brand new. And so we decided to have make that the first reading and do a second reading later.
Okay, and you said the 2nd of April is when you're going to do this.
We're not going to do it next meeting because we wanted to get more time, and also because the city manager and one of the council members won't be there. And so we thought it would be best just to push it back to April 2nd.
Okay. So what are you thinking about? You personally are thinking about the impact fees and the raises. Are you completely happy with doing the 100% like what they are talking about over a period of time? Or would you rather see something different, like cutting clear back and saying, this is already figured in what has been done before, just let it ride at that. So where do you stand on that?
I think I like the process we followed. I think we've gotten generally very good feedback from our partners in the development and in the construction industries, the realtor industries. They've been at the table with us the whole time. They've appreciated having a steering committee, having access to the council and to the staff.
And that was the first time.
It was.
That ever happened.
Yeah.
Did you because you haven't ever experienced that before, right? Because you've only been on a short period of time. 4
years, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was here for 2019, and I'm told it was much more acrimonious.
Oh, yep, yeah.
Yeah. I think I've been able to watch the back and forth between industry and the city staff, and I think it's been very robust pushback from industry, appropriately so. And I think staff has taken their pushback very seriously. We're in a very different spot than we were 4 months ago when we first got the report back, the study. We are not going to do the linkage fees, which have been very expensive. We're not going to do the municipal facilities fees. We took lots of chunks out of them based on feedback from people. Like it's all about this calculation that you do, and they said this shouldn't be included in the calculation, and when we agreed, we took it out. Right. There's for transportation fees. We had originally put the fees based on 2024 standards, and we agreed to push it back to 2004 standards. That takes a whole bunch of the money out of the impact fees. I think that was one that I didn't think we had to do, but I think it was a good thing to do. And then, like you said, we're going to phase them in over 3 years at least.
Okay. So it's not over the 6-month time period that we were originally at, and that was causing a real problem.
Yeah, it's disruptive to people's and their projects. Can I do the project I planned? Having 3 years time frame helps quite a bit. It was originally going to go in phase half of it in July, and now we're pushing back for a whole year before we even start phasing them in.
Okay.
It seems much more reasonable now to me. I met with Kevin Bray this morning. He's the president of the Home Builders Association. And,
right.
I think he and I have some differences of opinion about it, but he would say it's also been a very good process.
Well, differences of opinion is fine, as long as you can work together to find a common solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which goes back to your shared vision and making sure that the vision is shared actually by all of the community and not just the people that support you. which
Yeah,
I think is tough.
and you can't have shared vision without having communication and collaboration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't ever talk about things together, how you can have a shared vision?
Right,
Exactly.
right.
I have one more question, just a curiosity point, and I cannot think of the name of it. And I looked on my notes, and of course I don't have them. These notes that I brought
Sure.
are sitting at home, of course. But you had mentioned something about St. Mary's Catholic Outreach has the new home there, or the new
Mother Teresa Place.
Yes, Mother Teresa Place. There was another one that you mentioned.
On Orchard Mesa.
What is that, and where is it?
The Counseling Education Center?
No, it was another housing thing like Mother Teresa Place.
So there's Liberty Apartments. I think you mentioned that last time.
Is that on Orchard Mesa?
It is.
Okay.
Is that new?
It hasn't been built yet, but we've been working with them.
Oh, all right.
And who are you working with on that one?
The developer.
Oh, okay.
So Proposition 123 is this state ballot measure that was passed a couple of years ago that provides money for affordable housing. And there are different programs within that, and they're going to apply for one of those programs. And if they get the funding, we will support them in making affordable housing.
And what will that affordable housing mean? Now, because we talked last time about the small A and the big A.
That's the one thing that I was just going to ask, the difference between affordable and
attainable.
There's such a difference.
Sure. For you, what's the difference?
Pardon me?
What's the difference for you?
The difference for me is attainable is something that your lower middle class can actually afford to get into, or maybe the upper lower class. It's a little harder to get attainable housing here in this valley. Affordable is based on what your income is.
Yeah.
So that's if you have a high income, you can afford a lot more.
And that's the big A.
That's the big A, right?
Well, the big A would say that it's going to be income tested, and if you make an income above a certain degree, you can't even apply for it. So we talk about area median income, and for anything to be considered big A affordable, you have to be at an income that's at or below 60% of the people in your community. That's how you qualify for big A affordable. Attainable, like you're saying, is more like the middle income people. It's like working class people. Teachers, firefighters, nurses, people who are trying to.
That actually is a higher class income
in
Grand Junction.
In Grand Junction, that is upper middle class.
Because you look at the big employers in Grand Junction, and I know we have a lot of small employers, but it's going to be St. Mary's, it's going to be the school district, is going to be and the city is a big employer, and they are really paying. If I look for another job, and with the teachers, when I was a teacher, I thought we got paid, a very reasonable amount. And you can only do so much. So you can say you're giving me a raise, but I'm giving you everything I can anyway.
Yes,
so giving me a raise is just making it nicer for me. But firefighters and that group, I think the most of the population is working at jobs that don't pay nearly as much. Public service used to be, if you could work for them, boy, you were really making money.
Yeah.
But nurses are paid quite a bit.
Very well.
They're paid very well. And a lot of these industries over $100 an hour, but that's not most of the population of Grand Junction.
If they make $30 an hour, that's big wages for that demographic that we're trying to fill those spots for. And it takes two to make a decent payment on a house, and so it's really difficult for the attainable.
It is.
And that was an area, I'm sorry, and I'll let you talk.
It's all good.
Because that was an area where, when we've had Hogan on, he said a lot of times $1,000 or $2,000, that's why they push back so hard on the impact fees, is the difference between somebody being able to qualify for a house and not qualify for a house. And then he said, on average, it's 4 years again before they can apply. And if you look at that idea that by 2030, nobody will have anything, you'll rent, and you'll be happy.
That's where I was going to go next.
You aren't owning. And that seems to be, with what we're building, when you talk about building an apartment complex, that's not ever going to be yours. And I'm not going to raise a family in 600 square feet like you would have at the apartments down on First.
Right.
So it is a problem, and making it more affordable, I think, can be done a lot through government being willing to move back off impact fees, move back off regulations, move back off some of the requirements that make it take so long and make it cost so much. Like you've said, you can't do anything about the cost of lumber. I can't do anything about how much a plumber charges me a year. But I can do things about those type of activities to make it easier for people to build starter homes. I think would be a better.
Attainable, yeah. I think one thing that I don't get credit for this at all, because it happened before me, and is we have moved our economy quite a bit to be less affected by changes in the broader economy. We've diversified it quite a bit. Like you're saying, we have nurses, teachers. We're the health and human services hub for our area. We have lots of recreation now. We have more manufacturing now. And I think that's good overall for us as a community.
It is, but when I was looking at that too, a lot of it is either service or tourism, which is still largely affected by overall economy. If we're in a recession, people aren't coming to Grand Junction, and only areas where you're actually talking about manufacturing and some of the boom and bust, they were booms because this is something new.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that the overall economy, it was just there was a big influx during oil shale because they thought that was going to be a neat new thing.
So I think having multiple industries in the community
It's
helps
good.
a lot. Because that way, if one industry takes a tank, whether it's recreation or extraction or healthcare, there's other industries that are going to hold us up a little better. So I'm all for that.
And we need that in order to attract good doctors, good teachers, professional deputies, sheriff's departments, all of those kind of people. So we need all of the diversity to be able to attract those kind of people. So it's a hard mix.
It is. But I feel much better about what we have here than like what we'd have in a small rural town like in Mancos or something like that, where they're still going to be very much attached to one industry. And so
Understood there.
And I agree with you.
yeah.
Whoa.
Can't believe it.
So you've been in this game already for a while. What are you hoping to bring to the table this time that your opponent is not?
I mean, the only thing I'll say about that is bringing experience. Having been in it for 4 years, that really helps me a lot. It was a very steep learning curve to learn how impact fees work, how taxes work, how roads are built. These are all things that neither he nor I have any experience with when we first run for city council. I think, if Cody and I both lose, we will have 4 people on council who are brand new, never a day on council, 2 people with 2 years, and only 1 person with more than 1 term. And that would be a really tough spot for us to be in, because I think there is a knowledge to be learned, there's a decision-making ability that gets improved with time, and I'm hopeful that I can continue to be a steadying force for the other people on council as they're coming on.
And you think council has that much effect that it's going to make that big of a difference? And the reason I'm saying that is because your city planners and all your city staff seem to be running the show. And you guys are just the yes or no people. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think that's an advantage of having a more seasoned council. When you're first coming on, you don't really know when to push back. You don't really know, is this a reasonable thing I'm being told, or is this, someone who hasn't considered the broader community? And I feel like I'm much more adept at discerning that now that I've been on for 4 years than I was when I first got on, for sure.
Are you more discerning and listening to your constituents?
I believe so. I mean, how can go back to impact fees?
Right.
I think that was I think that was actually a good example of Mike Bennett doing a good job and of saying we want to bring down the temperature on these issues. We want to be more collaborative. But I think the overall outcome has been very positive with that.
Okay.
I know that there's a big part of some people running for council, that is their campaign is the city's not listening, and I don't agree with that. I think we can always do better. We can always do much better, but I think that's an important thing that we're trying to do.
Okay, so this is just going back. when Greg Caton was here, did you think City Council listened? Did you think they were listening to the community? He brought in a lot of decisions, like you said last time. He was the one that decided to close down Whitman Park without saying, "Hey, City Council, what do you guys think? Do you think this is a good idea or not?" And do you think that under his realm, a lot of problems were created, and now you've got a new city manager that's better, or do you think he was doing just fine?
I think he brought certain great strengths. I like more the interpersonal style of Mike Bennett. I think Greg Caton was masterful with the budget and financial management. He was good at getting projects done that I think have been valuable projects overall.
Like what? I always like examples.
Sure, great example. So I mean, like we had the whole riverfront, was abandoned. It was mine tailings and uranium problems, and there was. When I first moved here, there was like 6,000 cars along the river, right? That we had it completely been abandoned to a wasteland.
Talking about Brady trucking and all of that in there.
And he was part of like that can't be our situation. I think Rick Taggart deserves great credit for that also. And as of 6 years ago, that was all gone, cleaned up. We're putting in Las Colonias, Dos Rios. That's all great economic development that will give us support for our economy for decades to come. It'll give us more housing.
I did hear that was actually not true, that it wasn't. And I can't remember who told me that Las Colonias was actually not making the money that it's been
slow to develop for sure.
That it should have been doing compared to the amount that had been put in. And Bonsai was one that they complained about quite a bit, the amount of time that Sarah Schrader took to actually complete the project that she had talked about for.
The only project I think about that would be like the zip line.
That
That was the slow to put it in because there was problems with getting it permitted through the state. That's at the state level. But they've been the anchor for Las Colonias since it got started, so I give them credit for that for sure. And full disclosure, we are friends with the Schraders, and so our kids they're the exact same age kids, and we've been very good friends with each other. So
good, but it was a problem that it didn't get and permitting. And again, it shows you how the government can work against you.
Yeah, I think they would say that in that moment.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can't think of anything else. You get in here and you get battered. I know Nick's nice to you, but that was because he wasn't right here. If
I will
right
say,
here, he would have battered you.
You and I have had some tough conversations, but mostly the very first time I came on, the last 2 times, I found this process to be delightful.
Okay, good.
You ask great questions. You kind of ask follow-up questions, and you're making sure I'm being honest and having integrity. And that's your job.
Okay.
And your job. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we know them, the truth as we see it. You decide. Thanks, Randall.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.